Have you ever wondered what happens after death? What exists beyond this world as we know it? Today you will learn a story so unbelievable that can change your outlook on life after death. Imagine this. A girl falls into a coma after a serious accident. Doctors no longer have hope. The family prays, calls for a miracle, but the days go by and nothing happens. So, against all medical predictions, she simply wakes up. But that's not all. She wakes up speaking a language that no one can understand. Could it be a forgotten language, an extraterrestrial language, or the tongue of angels? What she revealed left experts and religious people completely speechless. Could this be proof that there is something beyond death? Many believe that the near-death experiences, NDEs, they are just illusions of the brain, but this story defies all rational explanations. What did this girl see on the other side? What did she try to tell the world when she came back? Get ready, because in the next few minutes, you will meet one of the most impressive stories ever recorded about the afterlife. But let me warn you, this story may change your beliefs. Watch until the end before it's too late. Billie Harper was just 6 years old and lived with her parents in the small town of Asheville, Carolina do Norte, a peaceful city surrounded by mountains where life seemed to go at its own pace, far from the hustle and bustle of large urban centers. Billie was an energetic, curious child, always exploring the open fields near her home. His smile lit up any room, and his laugh was the most precious sound to his parents. But on that autumn morning, something changed forever. The day was cool. The leaves on the trees were beginning to turn orange, covering the streets with a golden carpet. Billie played in the yard as usual while her mother prepared breakfast. Nothing seemed different until, in a matter of seconds, everything turned into a nightmare. An out-of-control car appeared on the street at high speed. The driver lost control while trying to avoid a dog that was crossing the road. The vehicle climbed onto the sidewalk, and before anyone could react, it hit Billie squarely. The impact was brutal. His small body was thrown several meters away, falling to the asphalt without any movement. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Neighbors ran to see what had happened. Billie's mother's heart skipped a beat when he heard the desperate screams in the street. When he left the house, the scene he found was terrifying. His daughter was lying on the floor, inert, pale, with blood dripping from her head. The driver, in shock, tried to speak, but his words were shaky. No one could say if Billie was still alive. Paramedics arrived quickly. She still had a pulse, but it was very weak. The head trauma was severe, and on the way to the hospital, his body began to shut down. At Asheville Regional Hospital, doctors struggled to stabilize her. She underwent emergency surgery to contain the brain hemorrhage, but the prognosis was not good. After hours of tension, the doctors gave the worst news possible. Billie had fallen into a deep coma. The impact on the brain was too severe, and the medical team prepared the parents for the worst. If she survives, the experts said, she may never talk, walk, or recognize you again. Cruel words, but necessary. Billie's future was now uncertain. The days passed. Time seemed frozen for his family. In the hospital room, his mother held his hand every night, telling stories, praying, hoping for a miracle. The father, previously a skeptical man, began to look for answers in faith, clinging to the hope that Billie would return. Then, on the 16th day, something unexpected happened. It was a morning like any other. The sun had barely risen over the horizon, and the medical team was carrying out routine procedures. That's when one of the nurses noticed a slight movement in the girl's fingers. At first, they thought it was an involuntary reflex, but suddenly, your eyes opened. The room fell into absolute silence. The mother's heart skipped a beat. The nurse ran out to get a doctor. Billie blinked a few times, looking confused, and then she started talking. But he wasn't English. It wasn't the disjointed babbling of someone who had been unconscious for weeks. What came out of Billie's mouth was a sequence of flowing words, sung like a prayer or an ancient song. The doctors tried to calm her, asking her name, asking if she could understand what they were saying. But Billie kept talking. The words seemed charged with a different energy, as if she were reciting something sacred. The hospital's most experienced nurse began to shake. She had already seen people waking up from comas, some with difficulty speaking, others completely disoriented. But that wasn't normal. The parents were astonished. The mother fell to her knees beside the bed, holding her daughter's hands. "Billie, it's me, Mommy. Can you understand me?" The girl looked at her, but her expression was distant, as if she was connected to something no one else could see. Doctors called specialists. Linguists were called in to try to decipher what Billy was saying. The audio was recorded and sent for analysis. Some words seemed familiar, but the structure of the language was completely unfamiliar. The linguist who analyzed the first few minutes of the audio opened his eyes wide when he noticed something frightening. The language resembled ancient records of sacred and mystical languages. Some theological experts began to take an interest in the case. For some, this could be a divine manifestation. For others, it was a near-death experience that activated hidden parts of Billy's brain. But no one could explain how a 6-year-old girl, who until then only spoke English, could be fluent in an unknown language. And then, Billy stopped talking. The silence in the room was absolute. She took a deep breath, as if something had finally let go of her. He looked directly at his mother and, for the first time since he woke up, said something understandable in English. What she said made her mother shiver from head to toe. They're still here. But who were they? What did Billy see while she was unconscious? Where did this unknown language come from? Something bigger is happening. Signs, messages, and mysteries that science cannot explain are being revealed. Leave your like and sign up now to be part of this journey and discover what's to come. The moment Billy woke up was like the explosion of a silent storm. Doctors expected that when she regained consciousness, she would be disoriented, confused, perhaps even unable to speak at first. But what happened was completely different. As soon as his eyes opened, there was something strange about them. They didn't just look like the eyes of a child coming back from a coma. They had an intense glow, an inexplicable depth, as if they had seen something that no one there could ever understand. Amanda, her mother, immediately approached with tears in her eyes, taking her daughter's small hand and whispering, "Billy, my love, you're back." But Billy didn't respond. She turned her head slowly, as if trying to get her bearings. His eyes roamed the hospital room, the white walls, the beeping machines, the anxious faces of his parents and doctors. And then she opened her mouth. What left his lips was not a cry for help, nor an incoherent mumble. It was something that chilled the blood of everyone there. Words, but not ordinary words. Sounds that no one could decipher. It was a rhythmic, almost musical sequence, with intonations that seemed to follow a precise pattern. It was as if Billy was reciting something that needed to be said. The nearest nurse took a step back, her expression alternating between shock and fear. The doctor hesitated, frowning, trying to find a rational explanation for this. Amanda and Richard looked at each other, not knowing how to react. "Billy, what are you saying?" Amanda asked, her voice shaking. But the girl didn't stop. His words kept coming out, faster and faster, more and more intense. And that's when something even stranger happened. The heart monitor, which until then was emitting a stable signal, began to oscillate. The numbers changed, as if they were reacting to what she said. The lights in the room seemed to flicker for a split second. The feeling inside that room became something palpable, as if an invisible presence was there. Richard, trying to remain calm, took out his cell phone and started recording. He needed to record that. I needed to show someone who could understand what was happening. Then Billy stopped talking abruptly. For a moment, the room was completely silent. No one moved, no one even breathed. Whatever this was, it had just happened before their eyes, and no one there had an explanation. But before anyone could say anything, Billy muttered something under her breath. "They told me to remember." Amanda felt a shiver run down her spine. "Who, my love? Who told you that?" The girl's eyes turned to her mother, but the expression she carried was not that of an ordinary child. It was as if he was seeing something beyond, something that others could not perceive. And then, almost imperceptibly, Billy whispered another sentence. This time it was clearer. And it was enough to make one of the doctors leave the room pale as a ghost. "Time is running out." The words resonated through the room like silent thunder. Richard turned off the recording and looked at his wife, not knowing what to say. What did that mean? What time was Billy talking about? The news about the girl who woke up from a coma speaking an unknown language quickly spread. First, inside the hospital, then all over the city of Evergreen Falls. It didn't take long for experts to become interested in the case. Billy's recording was sent to linguists and scholars around the world. Many tried to find some logical explanation, something that could fit what the girl said into known patterns. But the more they analyzed it, the more it became clear that this was not something that could simply be explained. Some words seem to have roots in ancient Aramaic, a language spoken in the time of Jesus. Others resembled fragments of Sumerian dialects, a language that had been extinct for thousands of years. But there was something more, something that none of the scholars could identify. There were words and sounds that simply did not belong to any known language on Earth. This discovery paved the way for another theory. What if Billy was speaking a language that is not human? Reports about the call tongue of angels have existed for centuries. Many religious texts describe celestial languages, forms of divine communication that can only be understood by those chosen to receive them. In the Christian tradition, there are references to the gift of tongues, where some people are able to speak spiritual languages that do not belong to this world. In mystical Judaism, there is a belief that some souls can connect with higher dimensions and bring messages from spiritual beings. Could this be the case for Billy? What if she had connected with something much bigger during her near-death experience? As experts debated this possibility, another question began to emerge. What if Billy wasn't just repeating random words, and if she was conveying a message? It was then that religious people began to get involved in the case. Some believed that Billy may have received a prophetic warning. Others feared the message was a sign of something imminent, something to come. An experienced priest was called to listen to the recording. After listening carefully, he asked to speak to Billy in person. When he entered the room and saw her, he couldn't hide his uneasiness. "Do you remember anything about what happened while you were sleeping?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Billy nodded slowly. "I wasn't sleeping." Amanda held her breath. "Where were you, darling?" For a moment, the girl was silent. His gaze seemed lost on the horizon, as if trying to find the right words. "I was far away, in a place where everything was light, but they told me I needed to go back. I had something to say." The priest exchanged a worried look with the girl's parents. "What do you need to say, Billy?" The girl hesitated. Then he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Time is running out." But no one is listening. These words left the room in absolute silence. Nobody knew what to do with that information. What did Billy mean by that? What did she know that no one else knew? With each passing day, it became more evident that his near-death experience was not just an isolated event. She had returned with something that could change everything. Billy's case quickly became a mystery that went beyond the confines of Evergreen Falls. Doctors, scientists, religious people, and scholars of ancient languages were intrigued by what that 6-year-old girl had said after waking up from her coma. The recording made by his father began to circulate among experts, and the more people heard it, the more questions arose. What was she talking about? How could I pronounce with such precision words that seemed to belong to a language lost in time? Was it an ancient language, or something beyond human understanding? The first to analyze the case were linguists. James Holloway, who had already detected similarities with Aramaic, continued studying the recording, trying to find patterns. He sent the audio to a group of ancient language researchers, including experts in Sanskrit, early Hebrew, and even Akkadian. The response he received was frightening. Some words spoken by Billy seemed to have roots in Enochiano, a language described as the language of angels by John Dee and Edward Kelly, two 16th-century occultists who claim to have received messages from celestial beings. Enochian is a mysterious language, made up of symbols and sounds that do not resemble any modern language. But Billy had no way of knowing that language. Her parents had never been exposed to esoteric texts, and she had certainly never heard anything like it. In addition to Enochian, other fragments of Billy's speech resembled snippets of a long-forgotten Sumerian dialect. Sumerian was the first written language in human history, and few experts in the world have enough knowledge to translate it. But how could a 6-year-old child reproduce such complex sounds so naturally? The academic community was divided. Some believed that Billy might be manifesting a rare psychological phenomenon such as cryptomnesia, the brain's ability to store subconscious information and reproduce it without the person being aware of where it came from. But this explanation did not convince everyone. First, because Billy has never been exposed to ancient languages, and second, because experts agreed that it wasn't just a repetition of random sounds. There was a pattern, a structure, as if she was delivering an organized message. The theory that Billy had access to forgotten ancestral knowledge began to gain strength. At different times in history, there have been reports of people who, after near-death experiences or supernatural events, began to speak unknown languages. In the Bible, the book of Acts describes the day of Pentecost, when Christ's apostles began to speak in languages they had never learned, as if they were being guided by a divine force. The phenomenon, known as glossolalia, is often associated with spiritual experiences and appears in several religions over the centuries. But what Billy did wasn't exactly glossolalia. Glossolalia is often described as speech without logical structure, an emotional overflow of disconnected words. Billy, however, spoke clearly and coherently, as if she were actually communicating. Another impressive account dates back to the 12th century, when a young nun named Hildegard von Bingen began to have visions, and after them began to write in a completely unknown language. She claimed that she was receiving direct messages from higher entities, and to this day her texts remain a mystery to scholars, and Billy's case seemed to follow the same pattern. The more experts studied his words, the more they realized that this was not just a child's delusion. There was something deeper going on. Religious people were the next to become interested. A group of Christian scholars analyzed the recording and, based on biblical accounts and apocryphal texts, suggested that Billy may have received a spiritual gift. In several passages of Scripture, there are mentions of people who, after experiences close to death, returned different, with knowledge they did not have before. Moses, for example, when he ascended Mount Sinai, returned with a shining face and wisdom that seemed beyond human comprehension. St. Paul, after his experience on the road to Damascus, described hearing ineffable words which man is not permitted to speak. The most radical explanation suggested that Billy could have been chosen as a communication channel between dimensions. Some aspects of mysticism argue that certain individuals, after temporarily crossing the threshold of death, return with the ability to transmit messages from other planes of existence. This would mean that Billy not only saw something on the other side, but that she was tasked with telling what she saw. The question was, what exactly was she trying to say? The investigation took a new turn when a priest experienced in exorcisms was called to listen to the recording. He was skeptical about phenomena of this kind and believed that he could find a rational explanation for everything. But after hearing Billy's words, his face fell. "There's something here that shouldn't be," he murmured. When asked, he hesitated for a moment before answering. Some of the words this child is saying, they appear in ancient religious texts, words that, according to records, were never written to be said out loud. This caused everyone in the room to exchange nervous glances. What did this mean? Was Billy reciting something forbidden, something that shouldn't be revealed? The scariest thing happened when he tried to interact with Billy. He sat down next to her and gently asked if she remembered anything about where she was during her coma. Billy looked at him, her eyes once again reflecting that strange glow. "Do you want to know what they told me?" The priest nodded. The girl tilted her head slightly, and in a low tone, almost like a secret, she murmured a single sentence. "The time is near." The priest's eyes widened. His breathing hitched for a moment. He tried to maintain his composure, but was visibly shaken. "Who told you that?" he asked, his voice more tense than before. Billy blinked slowly as if considering the question. Then he responded in a way that sent a shiver down the spines of everyone in the room. "Those who watch." The silence that followed was overwhelming. Nobody knew what to do with that information. What did she mean by those who watch? Who were they? And why were they warning about the time being near? With each answer that emerged, new questions appeared. Billy seemed to be the centerpiece of something much larger, something that surpassed the barriers of human understanding. But that wasn't all. Because in one of the most impressive moments in this story, Billy revealed something that made even the most skeptical people doubt their own certainties. And that's exactly what we're going to explore now. Now tell me, do you feel this story is a sign? Do you think some people are chosen to bring messages from beyond? Write in the comments, "I believe," and be part of this conversation. Your opinion is important, and your voice can help reveal truths that many still don't see. What happened to Billy seemed impossible, but the truth is that her case was not the only one. Throughout history, there have been reports of other people having near-death experiences, NDEs, and returning speaking unknown languages, describing visions, and conveying messages that seemed out of this world. The phenomenon has been documented by scientists and spiritual scholars alike, and with each new report, one question becomes even more urgent. Did these people really access knowledge from the other side? One of the best-known cases occurred in 1978 in Spain with a boy named Miguel Ramirez. He was just 8 years old when he was involved in a serious cycling accident and was taken to hospital with severe head trauma. During the resuscitation procedure, his heart stopped for 4 minutes. When he finally came back to life, something surprising happened. He began to speak uninterruptedly, but the words that came out of his mouth were not Spanish, nor any modern language. His astonished family recorded what he said and took the recording to an expert in ancient languages. The discovery was frightening. Miguel was reciting words in a dialect Aramaic that hadn't been spoken for centuries. Doctors tried to justify it as a side effect of the trauma, but linguists disagreed. Miguel, who had never had any contact with ancient religious texts, not only spoke a language he did not know, but did so coherently, as if he were reading an invisible text. Most impressively, over the next few weeks, he began to describe a vision. He said he was received by beings of light, and that one of them showed him something like a large golden parchment, full of shining symbols. He stated that what was written there was a secret about humanity, but one that he was not allowed to remember completely. Another famous case happened in 1994 in Japan with a teenager named Aiko Nishimura. She was 14 years old when she drowned while swimming in a river. Her body was submerged for more than 6 minutes before paramedics were able to revive her. When she finally opened her eyes in the hospital, Aiko was visibly different. Her parents, who previously saw her as a shy and reserved girl, were shocked to realize that she was speaking a completely unfamiliar language. Unlike Miguel's case, Aiko didn't just speak isolated words. She wrote symbols on sheets of paper, symbols that were later identified as similar to Sumerian inscriptions. Aiko said that while she was dead, she was taken to a crystal temple where beings in white robes showed him the ancient scriptures of humanity. When asked who these entities were, she simply responded, "The guardians of knowledge." The phenomenon of people coming back from NDEs speaking strange languages doesn't stop there. United States, in 2007, a man named David Whitmore, a former staunch skeptic, suffered cardiac arrest and was clinically dead for 3 minutes. When he returned, he began to mutter words that sounded like ancient Hebrew. He said that while he was out of his body, he heard a voice telling him to remember what was forgotten. David had never studied Hebrew before, and yet he could recite entire passages from sacred texts without ever having seen one in his life. Science tries to find explanations for these phenomena. Some neurologists believe that during extreme trauma, the brain can access parts of the subconscious that are not normally activated. There is a theory called cryptomnesia, which suggests that the mind can store information subliminally and reproduce it in altered states of consciousness. But this theory does not explain how young children, like Billy and Miguel, who had never had contact with these languages, could speak complex words and sentences that no longer existed in the modern world. Another argument raised by some scientists is the so-called genetic memory theory, which suggests that traces of ancestral knowledge may be encoded in human DNA. But this theory is still highly controversial and does not offer a concrete explanation for the phenomenon. Spiritualists believe that these experiences prove that consciousness is not limited to the physical brain. For them, the NDE is a portal to a higher dimension, where the soul can access information and knowledge forgotten by humanity. Some mystical traditions speak of the call original language, the language spoken before the separation of languages at the Tower of Babel. According to these beliefs, some people after an NDE can bring fragments of that language back to the world. Tibetan monks have stories about children who, after moments of near death, came back talking to Shambhala language, a language that, according to them, belongs to a hidden realm where enlightened beings keep the secrets of the universe. Similar reports were found in ancient Kabbalah manuscripts, where sages are described who, upon entering states of deep ecstasy, received messages in a language incomprehensible to ordinary humans. What does this all mean? Did Billy, Miguel, Aiko, and David access something that humanity forgot? Do these experiences indicate that, after death, there is greater knowledge waiting to be revealed? At a conference on near-death experiences, renowned psychiatrist Dr. Raymond Moody, author of the book Life After Life, addressed the phenomenon of people returning from NDEs with inexplicable new skills and knowledge. According to him, many patients report not only changes in their perception of reality, but also the feeling of having received downloads of information that they cannot fully understand. In his words, there seems to be a kind of universal library that some people access during their near-death experiences. The problem is that the human mind is not equipped to retain everything it sees there. If this is true, could Billy and other NDE survivors receive fragments of this knowledge? Could it be that the language she speaks is part of something much bigger, something that humanity is not yet ready to understand? There is an intriguing theory among some spiritual scholars that certain people, when returning from near-death experiences, bring coded messages, something that, if deciphered correctly, could reveal hidden truths about our existence. Some of these messages may be incomplete or fragmented because the human brain cannot fully translate what was seen on the other side. If this theory is correct, Billy could be a key piece in this puzzle. What did she see? What do the words she utters really mean? Could it be carrying a warning, an ancient secret, or even knowledge that does not belong to our civilization? From the moment Billy woke up from her coma and began speaking that mysterious language, her life and that of her family changed forever. What was once a peaceful routine in Evergreen Falls was now shrouded in mystery, speculation, and a never-ending search for answers. But the most impressive was yet to come. The days following his awakening brought a new series of inexplicable phenomena. Billy, who was once just an ordinary 6-year-old girl, began to demonstrate behaviors that no one could understand. She started waking up in the middle of the night saying she was listening voices. They weren't random voices, she said, but rather whispers that seemed to be trying to give her messages. A few times, her parents found her sitting up in bed, staring into space, as if she were in some kind of trance. At first, Amanda and Richard thought this might just be a side effect of the coma. Perhaps the trauma had affected his perception of reality, but the more they paid attention, the more they realized that this was not normal behavior. Billy wasn't scared. On the contrary, she looked serene, as if knew exactly what was going on, even if others around him didn't understand. She started drawing strange symbols on papers and walls. The lines were firm, almost geometric, and repeated themselves with frightening precision. When his father photographed some of these drawings and sent them to an expert in ancient languages, he received a disturbing response. Some of the symbols resembled cuneiform writing, one of the world's oldest writing systems used in Sumer more than 5,000 years ago. But Billy never had contact with this type of knowledge. Furthermore, something even more unsettling began to happen. She began to predict small events before they happened. Nothing big at first, just everyday things. She said someone would knock on the door minutes before this happened, that the phone would ring, and that it would be a certain person. But over time, the predictions started to get more specific and scarier. One night, while they were having dinner, Billy placed the cutlery on the table, looked at her parents and said in a calm, almost indifferent tone, "Grandma is going to visit us." Amanda and Richard looked at each other, confused. Amanda's mother had passed away 3 years earlier. "Billy, what are you talking about?" her mother asked, trying to hide the shiver she felt when she heard that. The girl just smiled. "She's already here." The atmosphere inside the house became heavy. Amanda tried to change the subject, but she couldn't ignore the fact that, over the next few days, Billy started mentioning details that only her deceased grandmother could know. Little memories of moments the girl was too young to remember, phrases that Amanda's mother used to say, intimate family things that had never been told to Billy. What was happening? Had the near-death experience opened some kind of portal inside Billy's mind? She was really connecting with something beyond our understanding. The doctors who followed the case tried to find explanations. Some have suggested that the coma could have caused neurological changes that activated normally inactive areas of the brain, which would explain Billy's heightened sensitivity to perceiving patterns and anticipating events. However, that still didn't explain the mysterious language, nor the symbols, much less how he seemed to know things he shouldn't. The family, increasingly disturbed by the events, decided to seek help from a specialist in spiritual phenomena. That's how they met the Dr. Elias Moreau, a renowned researcher who has been studying cases of near-death experiences for years. When he met Billy, he immediately realized that what was happening there went far beyond what doctors could explain. When talking to the girl, he asked her a series of questions about what she remembered from the time she was absent. Billy, in her calm voice, replied without hesitation, "I went to where everything is light. There they showed me things that I need to remember, but I can't tell them all at once." "Who showed you these things? Moreau asked. "Those who watch." This was the same answer Billy had given before, but who were these observers, and what exactly did they want her to remember? Dr. Moreau decided to test something. He showed Billy a series of images from different religious and philosophical texts throughout history: Hebrew, Egyptian manuscripts, Buddhist texts, alchemical symbols, and to her astonishment, the girl seemed to recognize some of them. In one of the most striking moments, Moreau placed before her an image of the celestial alphabet, a writing system that some mystics believe to be the true language of angels. Billy stared at the symbols for a few moments and without hesitation began to trace some letters on the paper as if she already knew that alphabet. The researcher was perplexed. How could a 6-year-old girl who had never had access to any of this recognize those symbols? As the family tried to deal with all of this, Billy began to report something even more disturbing. She said that some nights, before going to sleep, saw glowing shapes inside his room. They didn't speak with words, but the girl understood what they wanted. According to Billy, these forms were there to ensure that she did not forget the message entrusted to her. This statement made her parents even more uneasy. Was her daughter really having visions of something spiritual? Or was your mind trying to process the experience in a way no one could understand? Many scholars who heard Billy's account believe that she may have developed a type of spiritual sensitivity after his NDE. There are historical records of people who, after returning from death, began to feel presences, see lights that others did not see, and even manifest unusual abilities. In some esoteric circles, it is believed that by crossing the threshold between life and death, one can awaken a connection with higher realities, gaining access to fragments of forbidden knowledge. But there was another explanation. Some paranormal experts have suggested that Billy could have become a channeler, someone capable of transmitting messages from other dimensions. According to this theory, her near-death experience would have opened a channel between her consciousness and something greater, allowing information to flow through her. But if that were true, the scarier question was, why her? Was Billy chosen to bring a specific message? Or did her experience just make her able to notice something that has always been around us, but that most people can't see? The only certainty was that his life would never be the same. The events continued to happen. The messages seemed to be getting closer and closer to something bigger. What happened to Billy makes us question everything we know about life, death, and the mysteries that surround us. An innocent child, with no prior knowledge of ancient languages, awoke from a coma speaking words that echo in forgotten records of humanity. She brought with her cryptic messages, visions of luminous beings, a knowledge that no one can fully explain. Could it just be a rare psychological phenomenon? A manifestation of the subconscious accessing ancestral memories? Or was Billy, in fact, touched by something bigger? Something that science still doesn't have the tools to understand? This is not an isolated case. Over the centuries, countless people have had near-death experiences and returned different. Some with new abilities, some with memories of places that shouldn't exist, and some, like Billy, with messages that appear to carry a warning. Whatever the explanation, the impact of this phenomenon is undeniable. It forces us to look beyond what we can measure and prove. It makes us reflect on what really happens after death, and whether there is something, or somebody, on the other side trying to communicate with us. Now I ask you, what if it was your son? What would you do if one day your child woke up speaking a language no one understands, drawing symbols of a lost civilization, and reporting encounters with entities of light? Would you believe it? Would you try to find a rational explanation? Or would you accept the possibility that there is something much greater than we can understand? Getting here was not by chance. Something inside you has awakened, be it a question, a shiver, or even the voice of God speaking to your heart. This means you are in the right place. Be part of this community, where we explore mysteries, supernatural experiences, and revelations that can transform your outlook on life and death. Sign up now and discover what else lies beyond the veil. Did you feel anything different when you heard this story? Maybe a shiver, an answer you didn't even know you were looking for. Leave your like right now. This way, this message can reach more people who need to hear this truth. You can be the instrument to carry this revelation forward. Now tell me, do you feel like Billy brought a message from the other side? Something inside you confirms that is there more beyond this life? Leave it in the comments. I believe there is something greater waiting for us. Your voice is part of this journey. Something much bigger is about to be revealed. And you won't want to miss what comes next. There are mysteries that defy everything we know, and in the next video you will feel it firsthand. Click on the video on your screen now and get ready for something that could change your vision forever. See you there.